Today, Joe Biden became the president of the United States, and it appears as if the gun grabbers are already celebrating and talking about his past success and how they plan to help guide him towards a future where we have less gun rights. Let's talk about what Everytown for Gun Safety was talking about today. So, Everytown for Gun Safety congratulates President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, the strongest gun safety administration in American history. Everytown for Gun Safety is a grassroots network, so they claim, and Mom Demand Action and Students Demand Action. Oh man, just the fact that they call themselves a grassroots organization when they're funded by billionaires like Bloomberg, they are not a grassroots organization. They are a group of useful idiots that are being guided by billionaires that want them to do what they want them to do. They think that they're making a difference, but ultimately they're just being told what to do and given money so that it looks like there's a righteous group of good, hardworking people behind it, when in reality it's Bloomberg's money slapped on a face of a couple of moms. This is where it gets concerning for me, calling gun violence a public health epidemic. This is where I'm not too pleased about this, because they're going to be tackling this from a whole new direction. In the past, it's kind of just been the same thing. They write legislation and they say, hey, guns are bad, let's ban them. I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more money put in towards research, and by that I mean research that's going to be meant to push an anti-gun agenda under the guise of public health. We discuss how, generally every year in the United States, about 30,000 people die from gunshot wounds. So about 30,000 people die from guns every year, or die from guns. 66% of that, over 2/3 of every death by a firearm, is by suicide. So 2/3 of all the deaths by suicide. That's something that you are never going to stop if you take away the guns. There is an argument to be made that guns are more successful, or a more successful tool in the use of suicide, whereas something like pills might be less successful. But when it comes to suicide, taking the guns away doesn't take away the root problem of someone wanting to kill themselves. Mental health is still important and we should focus on that, but it's not the gun's fault. So they're blaming the guns and using those gun deaths as a means to take away your gun rights, when in reality, if people just didn't kill themselves as often, they would have a lot less room to stand on. You then go a little bit further and you start looking at how many of those were law enforcement related, how many of those were gang related, how many of those were with handguns, which, by the way, have not been talked about in any ban whatsoever, or for the most part. I'm being a little bit hyperbolistic there, I guess. I don't think that's the right word. But when it comes to all gun deaths, over 86% of them, typically, on average, every year, are done by handguns. One of the firearms that pretty much every law enforcement official carries, one of the firearms that pretty much everyone agrees is the quintessential home defense, that nobody's trying to take your guns. You would definitely think that a handgun would fit under that protected bracket of firearm. They go on to talk about wanting to stop ghost guns. Here's something. Good luck. They go on to talk about the House and Senate have now been taken over by gun sense majorities, and how it's going to be very crucial in the fight against the newly bankrupt NRA. Newsflash, the NRA is not going away. Yes, I have my issues with the NRA, but it's Chapter 11. They're just restructuring and moving to Texas. Yeah, there's going to be some sort of fallout in the middle, but ultimately the NRA is still going to be around, and they still do have some power when it comes to pretending to do something with Congress. So President Biden and Vice President Harris have put together the strongest gun safety administration in American history, and we're all safer now that they are officially in office. Really, as of today, we are all safer. That's an interesting claim to make. Everytown is grateful to count both of them as longtime allies, and we will do everything in our power to help them enact common sense gun safety policies the American people are demanding. America is facing an array of crises, including the COVID-19, gun violence, and extremism. Unfortunately, President Biden is eminently qualified to address them simultaneously. Oh, so now COVID-19, gun violence, and extremism are all the same thing. Interesting. We congratulate him and Vice President Harris on their inauguration, and we look forward to standing with them as they continue their legacies of standing up to the NRA to make American families safer. Oh yeah, we know how much that gun control really does make people safer, especially when you consider the fact that from the 1994 to 2004 assault weapon ban that Biden was part of and championing, that there was no actual reduction in violent crime, as the trends have steadily declined over the last 60 years. The DOJ looked into it after the 10-year ban, and they determined that no, in fact, there was no difference in violent crime rates and the decline that they had steadily seen. During that period of time, we also had one of the most deadly mass shootings in American history. So for them to say that they are now safer and that they are going to be able to do this, and that putting gun violence, I'm putting that in quotes, as one of their top priorities is honestly just truly ridiculous. This is not what we should be focusing on right now. We should be focusing on trying to get this country back open, getting people more stable, because with this pandemic has come the depression that comes with losing your job, losing your livelihood, being locked in your own home. Those people who are then depressed are more likely to commit suicide. I think we're going to see a lot of data in the coming year about the suicide rates of this year, and it's kind of troubling. And ultimately, those people who did take their lives because of the hardships that they faced are going to be used as a tool for the gun grabbers, and I'm really just not happy about that at all. Now, for all the people that talk about, oh, Joe Biden isn't coming for your guns, he doesn't care about gun control, that's just, he's just saying that. Well, let's take a look at the fact that he is saying he wants Beto to be in charge of your firearms rights, and he wants him to be the gun control czar, many people have referred it to. Kamala Harris said that she would, within 100 days, if she was not given a bill, a gun control bill, would take executive action. Now, in my mind, when someone says that as the president, I'm assuming that that's going to be some sort of directive to the ATF, or it's going to be affecting imports of firearms. So for those of you that are in the market for an AK, get a foreign-made AK now. Go ahead and get it right now. Do it before you can't. Import AKs can disappear like that, because it's very easy for the United States to just say, no more imports. We saw it with Russia, and we saw it with the Saigas. Saigas are now incredibly valuable. You used to be able to buy them for a couple $100. I regret every day not purchasing one. If you're in the market for an AK, go ahead and get an import now. They talk about how he helped secure the 10-year ban on assault weapon and high-cap mags, when really we've already discussed how ridiculous that is. Joe Biden is coming for your guns, and that's the lame thing to say. I hate it. You get those NRA propaganda emails and stuff like they are coming for your guns, but they've said it. Their website has a dedicated page talking about the gun control plan that they have. They have been very clear that it's a top priority for them. It really shouldn't. There's so many other things in the world that we really need to focus on, but it seems like that's always the low-hanging fruit for politicians. It's an easy thing for them to say, hey, look, we made a difference, we made a change, we did something, when they're really just not doing anything, and they're just trying to please their crowd and, just jerk themselves off like they did something. Ultimately, this isn't good. I'm not happy to see any of this. Contact your representatives. If you live in a state like California, talk to people. Have real, honest conversations with people. Discuss with them what gun control actually is, what it does and doesn't do, and why it's important to have the tools to arm yourselves. In the state of California, especially with the 10-day waiting periods, I think a lot of people kind of opened their eyes as far as the difficulties of getting a firearm and how ridiculous some of these laws are. You explain to someone that lives in a nice, comfortable house in a location that's safe, and you say, hey, why shouldn't someone have to wait 10 days? Why shouldn't there be a cool down period? That's usually their argument. And then when it comes to a period of time when COVID-19 happens and riots start happening and people start questioning their safety, especially in the state of California. When I worked in a gun store, I saw a lot of people coming in for the first time in 2017 when Sonoma County burnt down. And a lot of them were saying things like, I never thought I would have to protect myself. I never thought that I wouldn't be able to call the police. I always thought the police would be there for me. I never thought anything would happen to me. And a lot of people have learned that, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. I think having real conversations with your friends is most likely going to be the best way to go about changing this culture. The right has definitely slacked on this. The gun owners have definitely slacked on this over the last 40 years. I think there's been a culture war that's been going on that a lot of people just weren't aware about. Have conversations, be a real person, talk to people in person, and be understanding of people's beliefs and work to help change their point of view. A lot of people have never been experienced to guns or never had any sort of experience with guns outside of someone shooting up a school. So why wouldn't they believe that guns are bad? Have those conversations, be a real person. You know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.